So thanks for logging on to YourErie.com for this week's Weather Academy. I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. Hey, we've had some pretty wild weather around here recently. You go back to Sunday, this past Sunday, when we had wind gusts in excess of 60, 65 miles an hour. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that is and an interesting phenomenon that occurred on Lake Erie because of all of that high wind action. And it's called a seiche, which is kind of a weird sounding word, right? It's of Swiss, French, and German origin. And basically, loosely translated, a seiche is the sinking of water. And we're going to show you a couple of different charts to kind of illustrate this and kind of explain what a seiche is. Now, maybe you're familiar with the term, maybe you're not. But if you aren't, it's kind of like a tsunami. But it's not, because a tsunami has a different definition technically, which I'm not going to get into here, but just kind of wanted to delineate those two. Seiche, it's kind of a seesaw effect on a body of water such as the Great Lakes. So let's kind of delve into the science behind this and why this happens. And it really comes down to angles and geometry. So if you're familiar with that. So there's Lake Erie. That's where you are there. And I want to point out something. Notice the orientation of the lake, okay? So it's southwest to northeast up towards Buffalo, right? Well, sometimes, especially in the fall, the jet stream, we're kind of closer to the jet stream in the fall. It becomes a little bit more active. So when you have an active jet stream, remember, the jet stream drives weather down here at the surface. So when the jet stream is nearby and it's active, we get active weather. So what is a seiche? I mentioned the origins of the word. Swiss, French, and German, meaning the sinking of water. Now, these can happen on all of the Great Lakes, but Lake Erie is most prone to a seiche because of the orientation of the lake from southwest to northeast. So, you get a southwest wind blowing across the surface of the lake, you can get what we call a seiche. And it's most common on Lake Erie and most common right around this time of the year in the late fall as the jet stream becomes more active. So basically what happens is, like if we go back to Sunday when we had those 50, 60, 65 mile an hour winds blowing over that open water of Lake Erie, it basically picks up the water from Toledo and throws it up towards Buffalo. So it's kind of like a sloshing effect. So if we were to tilt this in the vertical and you looked at Lake Erie, think of it as like a bathtub full of water. And when the wind blows over that body of water, it starts to kind of slosh back and forth, right? So that's exactly what we talk about when we talk about a seiche. And remember, wind over water, you're talking about probably, arguably, two of the most powerful forces when it comes to meteorology. The power of wind and the power of water. And here's the reason why, because the lake is what we consider to be a frictionless surface. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, there's nothing to slow that wind down, right? That's why it's always windiest right near the shoreline, because that wind is barreling across the open water, it comes crashing into the shore, and it encounters friction. It encounters land, it encounters buildings, it encounters trees, it encounters hills. So there's nothing like that out over the lake, obviously. So that wind could really start to speed up over the lake. And you take a case like Sunday where we had that southwest flow ripping at 60, 65, 70 miles an hour, that can lead to a seiche. So again, it picks up the water from out near Toledo and then throws it north and east up towards Buffalo. So here's kind of a different illustration of that. And this is courtesy of the NOAA Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab. So imagine this little divot here as Lake Erie, okay? And Lake Erie is the shallowest of the Great Lakes, which is another reason why these are most common on Lake Erie. So pretend Toledo's over here, and pretend Buffalo's up here, okay? And Erie would be like somewhere in here, okay? So basically, with the force of the wind over the water, you can see that west and southwest wind kind of interacting with the surface of the lake here. So this dashed line that you see right here, that would be the water level if there were no outside force acting on it. So just kind of a still water level. If there were no wind, that's what the water level would be. But you throw in that west and southwest wind, and it starts to exert a force on the water. So again, say Toledo here, the water level drops, but it starts to rise as you go towards Buffalo with the effect of that wind blowing across the surface of the lake. So you get that water drop and then the water rise. This is what we call a thermocline, which is a whole other topic, but basically you kind of get the idea. The force of the wind on the water, picking all that water up and moving it up towards Buffalo. So the wind setup is a local rise in water level caused by the wind. So case in point, with the southwest wind, Buffalo would be in prime position. And it was. There was a lot of flooding up in Buffalo this past Sunday. And another kind of visual of this is what we call a hydrograph. This kind of keeps an eye on the water levels on Lake Erie at different points along the way, right? So this is the hydrograph for Toledo, Ohio. And right away, your eyes are drawn to this big dip, right? So I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is going back to last week. You can see the water level pretty steady state, kind of fluctuates a little bit. And then we get into Sunday and into Monday, where we had that big windstorm. Look what the water level did in Toledo. It dropped by about 8 feet in Toledo. So there it is. You can trace it. The water level goes down, and then it comes back up. So that's one example. So if they had a 8-foot drop in the water level in Toledo, what do you think happened in Buffalo? Just the opposite, right? So let's take a look. There's the hydrograph for Buffalo on Sunday. So again, lake level, pretty steady state right up through Saturday, Sunday, and then Sunday night, look what happened. A big rise. Now this top point represents 11 feet. But if you look at the clustering right here, that average would be about 8 feet, which makes sense, right? 8-foot drop in Toledo, 8-foot rise in Buffalo, because the water being sloshed southwest to northeast up towards Buffalo, right? And to put this into perspective for you, maybe kind of bring it down to earth, I'm 6'4", all right? I'm not a short guy. The water rise in Buffalo was 8 feet. It's over my head. So that's the power of wind over water, a frictionless lake which could lead to big problems. Now, basically, you can see the spike there, and then the lake levels kind of level off and do their thing again. So initially, the first seiche is kind of that push of water up towards Buffalo, right? So you get that sloshing effect up towards Buffalo. What do you think happens when it reaches Buffalo? It floods, but then it's got to slosh back the other way, right? So that's what it'll do, literally. The lake will kind of do this like slosh effect. Now, the first wave of that initial seiche is always the biggest, and then as the water sloshes back, it tends to kind of level out due to gravity. So that's just kind of a visual. So think of Lake Erie as a big bathtub. You add a 50, 60, 75 mile an hour wind blowing across that water, you get that big slosh effect, and then it kind of reaches a state of equilibrium as gravity and other complex forces take over. So that's kind of an example of what a seiche is. Big drop in Toledo and a big jump in Buffalo. So that's kind of the background of a seiche. It's a pretty unique phenomenon, but it does happen, especially here on Lake Erie, and it certainly did this past Sunday with all that high wind. So if you don't know, that's what a seiche is. If you've never heard the word, now you know. And we, of course, are always looking for topics to cover. So if you have any suggestions or if you have any questions about this Weather Academy, that's the email right there, weather@wjettv.com. So today we covered the effect of wind on water and what a seiche is. And we'd like to hear from you, so shoot us an email. And we will be back next week with another topic here on the Weather Academy. Until then, I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. Science is cool. Never stop learning. We'll see you next week.